It was a gloomy, gray morning in the heart of the city. Clouds hung low like weary thoughts, and the streets glistened with the memory of last night's rain. Shops opened reluctantly, their shutters clanging open like tired yawns, while hurried footsteps splashed through puddles with little regard for the world around them. In the middle of all this motion, a boy stood still. 12-year-old Rafiq stood at the edge of a busy bazaar, staring longingly at a display of school shoes. His clothes were worn thin, and his feet bare, muddy, and bruised told a silent story. He shifted from one foot to the other, trying to avoid the sharp stones on the ground, but he winced with each step. His own shoes, once cheap but serviceable, had long given up on him. The soles had split open, and the stitching had come undone. He had tried to patch them up with rubber bands and a bit of tape he found, but last week's storm had finished them off completely. Still, Rafiq had said nothing to his mother. She already worked long hours selling boiled eggs at the station. Every rupee counted. Every egg sold meant one more bite to eat. He couldn't bear to add to her worries. Voiceover slow, gentle tone, he told himself. They're just shoes. I can manage. I have to. As Rafiq walked barefoot through the market, people barely noticed him. A few glanced, perhaps with mild curiosity, but most just kept moving. It wasn't cruelty. It was just indifference, the kind that grows quietly when you see too much suffering too often. A car rolled by and splashed dirty water across his legs. He gasped, but didn't complain. He just rubbed it off and kept walking. He passed vendors calling out their prices, rickshaws honking, children laughing with their parents. He felt invisible, like a ghost walking through a world that had forgotten him. That's when he saw him, Uncle Kareem, an old cobbler who had worked at the same street corner for over 30 years. His back was bent, and his beard was a soft gray cloud. He wore a woolen cap, frayed at the edges, and his hands were dark with polish and glue, but his eyes held stories. Uncle Kareem looked up from the shoe he was mending and spotted Rafiq shuffling by. His gaze lingered not with pity, but with quiet understanding. Slowly, he waved the boy over. Rafiq hesitated. He didn't want to beg. He didn't want to be offered something for free, but something in the cobbler's eyes felt safe. Voiceover warm tone. Uncle Kareem spoke in a gravelly voice. Where are your shoes, beta? Rafiq looked down, a bit ashamed. They broke. A few days ago. The cobbler nodded slowly, taking in the boy's thin frame, soaked clothes, and raw feet. He didn't ask questions. He simply pointed to a wooden stool beside him. Sit, rest for a while. Rafiq obeyed. Then, without another word, Uncle Kareem pulled out a dusty plastic bag from under his stall. Inside was a mismatched collection of donated shoes, some new, some old, some barely holding together. Rafiq walked through the winding streets, his new sneakers, carefully avoiding puddles as the light rain resumed. The shoes were a little too big, but to him, they felt like clouds, soft, safe, and warm. His fingers gripped the small sewing kit the cobbler had given him, holding it close to his chest, like a secret he never wanted to lose. But the rain didn't care about new shoes or feelings. The drops grew fatter, colder, and more impatient. Within minutes, the drizzle turned to a steady downpour. The sky, once a hesitant gray, now poured its sorrow over the entire city. Rafiq had no umbrella. He quickened his pace, ducking under stalls, ledges, and overhangs, but nothing gave him proper shelter. The cold began to bite into his bones again. His thin cotton shirt clung to him like wet paper, and the street, already slick with grime, now became a river of muddy water and discarded dreams. People hurried past with umbrellas and jackets, each locked in their own world, protecting themselves from the rain and perhaps unknowingly from each other. That's when it happened. At a crowded bus stop, where strangers stood like islands beneath the single broken shelter, Rafiq tried to wedge himself into a corner, but someone elbowed him. Another nudged him away. He didn't blame them. He was soaked, shivering, and small. Still, rejection stings more in the rain. Voiceover soft, reflective tone. It's not just water that soaks a boy's shoulders. It's the weight of being unseen. He backed away from the crowd and stood alone on the sidewalk, rain falling steadily on his head, trickling down his neck. His shoes, His precious shoes were getting wet. He felt helpless again, as if all the kindness from earlier had been washed away. Then he noticed her. A woman stood a few feet away, dry beneath a large purple umbrella. She was young, maybe in her 20s. Her face was calm, not hurried like the others. She wore a simple white scarf, and her eyes, bright and kind, looked directly at him. For a second, Rafik glanced away. She wasn't really looking at him. Maybe he was imagining it. But no, she stepped forward deliberately and walked toward him. Without a word, she raised her umbrella and held it over his head. Not hers. Rafik blinked. He looked up at her. She smiled. You looked cold. I'm okay, he whispered, embarrassed. But she shook her head. No, you're not. And just like that, she stood beside him, holding the umbrella over both of them, shielding the rain with quiet grace. They didn't talk much after that. Sometimes kindness doesn't need conversation. They stood there for 10 minutes. People came and went. Buses splashed past. No one seemed to notice them, just a soaked little boy and a stranger who chose to stand with him. But for Rafik, those 10 minutes were a lifetime. Warmth returned not to his skin, but to his spirit. When the rain slowed and the clouds began to part, she turned to him and said, I have something for you.